Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, MBA Student Insights, Military Veterans at the GSB. My name is Steve Barber. I have just finished my MBA 1 year here at Stanford. I'm joined today by my fellow veteran classmates, Sarah Martin and Vineet Rajan. We'll be talking about the student experience at the GSB today and the experience on campus as well. And we'll try to get to as many questions of yours as we can. If any questions come up during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And towards the end of the webcast, we'll answer however many we have time for. We're not going to talk too much about the admissions process today. So if you have any questions on that, you can always consult the website, as well as use the Q&A box, and our admissions staff will try to answer as many of those as they can. So we'll kick it off with some introductions. We'll start with Sarah. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you did in the military, why you came to the GSB, and essentially what you're looking to do after you finish?
Sure, Steve.
Thanks.
So I'm from the Bay Area, so right around Stanford. I went to West Point, the U.S. Military Academy, graduated in 2009, and I worked as a logistics officer and also in foreign language education. And after the GSB, I'm going to go back to the Army, and I will teach at West Point. And as far as why I came to the GSB, it's a top-notch program, and I was particularly interested in entrepreneurship, and it has a very strong program for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. How about you, Vineet?
Sure. So I'm Vineet Rajan. I grew up in Maryland and joined the Marines as an intel officer for the last 11 years. Left the UK, where it was my last duty station, and came to the GSB with my wife, Sandhya, and our 2 children. And what I hope to do after the business school is go into entrepreneurship or impact investing.
Outstanding. And as I said in the intro, I'm Steve Barber. I was in the U.S. Navy for 11 years as an F-18 pilot. I came to the GSB also knowing that it was a top-notch program and hoping to take my experience in aerospace as a pilot and transition it over to the business world. I'm married as well. I met my husband, Jimmy, in the Navy, and I grew up in San Diego. Okay, let's hit the questions, the good part. So we'll start out with some of the questions we've gotten received in advance. So we'll start with, how was the transition from being in the military to being in school? So for me, I'd say there were aspects that I thought went a little easier than I anticipated, and there were aspects that were a little bit harder than I thought. So what was easier was getting back into the academic mindset. I think you can be confident that if the GSB selects you for admission, you have what it takes to really thrive and excel here. And it took a few weeks to remember how to study, how to take notes, and what exams feel like, but relatively quickly, I got back up on plane there and remembered how to be a student. And there's so many resources here at the GSB to help you get to that point that that process was much smoother than I anticipated. It takes some people a little longer than others, but for me, it was relatively smooth, and I was lucky. Something that was harder than I anticipated transitioning from the military to business school is, you'll hear this many times in the context of business schools anywhere, is this idea of FOMO, fear of missing out. There is so much that goes on at Stanford that I really found that when I was in the military, we had a mission in mind, and I knew what I was doing for most of the week. We had goals we were going to try to achieve, and that really defined a lot of my actions. My social circle was pretty well defined based on the people that I knew in the military, and it kind of added some structure to life that I found is a little less prominent here. Again, there's so much that's going on with extracurriculars you can be involved in, career research and treks, and just the millions of offerings that the GSB has, that it was tough at first for me to prioritize and budget my time to know what was important to me and what I really wanted to spend the most of my time doing and getting out of this experience. Everyone that I've talked to has struggled with this in some way, shape, or form, so it's very natural, but it wasn't something that I could fully appreciate until I came here. And while it's been tough at times, it's also a really tremendous strength of this school that there really are just all these avenues to explore and develop yourself and answer questions about who you are and what you want to do after you finish up the GSB. Another question we had was about what we're studying or specializing in. The GSB might be a little bit different from some of the other schools out there as far as how we study and specialize in our degree. Sarah, can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. So we have a general MBA program, and so the first year everyone takes most of the same classes, and there is some opportunity to take electives, and with the general foundations you can take classes at different levels, and that was something that actually really appealed to me about the Stanford program, is that I could take the same classes that as everyone else, but at a level that was appropriate to me. So if I wanted to take advanced operations, I could do that. But if I wanted to take basic finance because I didn't have a finance background, that made a lot of sense.
Sure.
I have had room to take some electives during my first year. For example, I'm personally really interested in healthcare, and so I was able to take 2 healthcare classes, including the Biodesign Innovation course, which is a nice flagship program, and I did a global study trip that was healthcare focused.
Very cool. How about you, Vineet? What are your thoughts on that question about where our curriculum's designed and how we study here?
I think, like Sarah said, the appeal to me coming to the GSB was the fact that there was a general management foundation that I wanted and could achieve here, but at the same time it wasn't so prescriptive that I couldn't take some of the classes that I wanted to, particularly in the winter or the spring. I also did appreciate, much like to Sarah's point, that I could take a class that was right for my capabilities. So I had a little bit of finance background, so I could take a little more advanced finance classes, but I could go into more basic classes for like data and decisions, for example.
That's a great point. And I was definitely the base classes for everything that I took here. And like you said, I really appreciated kind of being able to dip my toe in these new subjects without feeling overwhelmed, because there's so many people with diverse backgrounds here that if I was thrown in with all, say, finance majors or people who had worked in, say, finance or investment banking, I probably would have been over my head. Stanford gets that not everyone comes at the same place when they get here, and really tailors the curriculum to, I find, give everyone a great chance to succeed.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. All right. We hit a little bit on this when we kind of did our intros, but can you speak in a little more depth, Vineet, about what made you decide to apply and ultimately attend Stanford as opposed to some of the other schools you looked at?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest draws for me was the fact that, like I said, the General Management Foundation is, I think, really important for those of us who are transitioning out of the military service. So I did 11 years in the Marine Corps, and I knew that I needed to relearn some of the accounting and finance that I learned 11 years ago. So that was a big draw for me, but I also was really appreciative of the fact that it wasn't so prescriptive and that I had some flexibility in my first year. And some of the other schools that I was looking at didn't have that flexibility, and I really wanted that. The number 2 reason why I came here was that I'm, much like Sarah, I'm very interested in entrepreneurship, and especially a focus on social innovation. And the GSB is really known for those 2 things in particular, so that was a huge draw for me. And then I didn't want to leave the Marine Corps and then come to a school and get lost in the huge class size. And so I found that the GSB class size was about the right level for me, where I could hopefully meet everybody in my class and actually know their names and develop a relationship with them, but not be so small that the network wouldn't be useful for me decades after I graduate. And the last thing, because I came from the UK as my last duty station, I really wanted something with good weather, if I'm being totally honest. My children like to be outside, and it's really helpful that the weather is beautiful almost all the year here.
That's definitely an important consideration. Thank you. So we brought up entrepreneurship. You just spoke to it there, Vineet. We've had questions about whether vets can go the entrepreneurial route. So I guess starting with you, Sarah, I think you've had some experience in this avenue. Can you talk to how it's been for you kind of pursuing entrepreneurial ventures as a first-year student and looking forward?
Sure, I think actually veterans fall pretty naturally into an entrepreneurial route. They've worked in large organizations. They can see the limitations of that and how sort of disruptive alternative ideas can really accomplish a lot.
Yeah.
And so there's veterans in all sorts of programs. I'm in the Biodesign Innovation program, and I've been working on a medical device that my team has invented, and we are planning to work on it this summer. So I'm just one example of someone who's gone into innovative space. We have a classmate, Patrick Robinson, who's working on another startup involving computer vision and I guess how would you phrase what he does? It's like.
Well, I think he's using technology to help the criminal justice system be able to not hold.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, not hold people too accountable for certain things. But there's a lot of opportunities here for entrepreneurship, whether you're a veteran or not. And I think the problem for the veterans will be is the fact that you have not had the opportunity to really think about being entrepreneurial in the traditional sense while in the military. But now you're dropped into this huge place of resources where there's so many classes, so many clubs. And almost more importantly, there's a lot of people who are also interested in entrepreneurship. So it doesn't end in the classroom. You often take it outside of the classroom and spend a lot of time with your colleagues working on personal endeavors. So I think veterans are very suited for entrepreneurship. It's just whether you're interested in it and whether you want to take a chance while here at the GSB.
For sure. And then just worth noting, you mentioned Patrick, Sarah, he's also a veteran in our class and our
Right.
classmate. So rough numbers, at least 25% of our veterans just in our class are doing something entrepreneurial over their first summer and possibly beyond. So it gives you a pretty good sense of the resources that are here for people who maybe don't have formal experience in the space, but have the drive and the hustle to really do something kind of world-changing, and something I really
And
value
that's something
about
that really
being here.
stands out about veterans is the drive and the hustle. So if you have an idea, the resources here are so plentiful. So you can be in Venture Studios, you can be take Lead Launchpad, Startup Garage, Biodesign Innovation, classes at the design school. So it's sort of like limitless opportunities if you've got idea and drive, which a lot of veterans do have.
Totally, and it's not always just if you have an idea for a product or a company, let's say. There's other avenues for entrepreneurial endeavors like search funds, for example, which are something that veterans also do a lot of, that we sort of pioneered the model for at Stanford, have a ton of resources to support those, and that, again, veterans are ideally suited for in a lot of circumstances just because they're used to kind of rotating into a new job every year or so and learning it quickly and really excelling at it. So yeah, I'm glad we had this kind of discussion on the details of the stuff that's out there, because it's not just I come to Stanford because I want to launch a company. There are so many ways to be entrepreneurial here, all of which are incredibly well supported.
Absolutely.
So something I value as well. Another question that's come in, so the Vets Club is obviously a huge source of support for us. We can talk on light terms to military members and sort of share our experiences and get things that maybe the perspective of our classmates they haven't been exposed to, so we can kind of build community in that way. But there's so many other clubs here. We talked, both of you have alluded to the entrepreneurship and tech-facing clubs, but there's other professional organizations and clubs that Stanford offers that can help people in their career search or just to find community. So can both of you maybe offer your perspective on some of the clubs that have been meaningful to you in your GSB experience?
Sure, that's right.
Sure. So I'm one of the co-presidents for the Social Innovation Club. As I mentioned, that I came here to the GSB particularly because I wanted to research that interest of mine of social innovation and social entrepreneurship. And so Social Innovation Club has taken a huge part of my time, but that's because I really am interested in that space. And so one of the other clubs I'm really interested in is a venture capital club. Yeah. And so because I'm doing a venture capital position this summer, the resources that I had, not only from just having the brown bag lunches with current venture capitalists, but also talking to my peers who've had experience in the venture capital industry, has been really helpful for me to grow and potentially launch a career after the GSB.
Really cool. How about you, Sarah?
It's awesome. So I'm in the healthcare club, and that's been really good. For example, just a couple weeks ago, we did this awesome trek through the Silicon Valley. We visited a couple different startups in biotech and also Gilead, and it was really good just to have that firsthand experience. Touring their companies, getting to talk to the CEOs of the startups, and then other folks in Gilead was really awesome. It's also really helpful for job postings. So the different clubs will often share internship opportunities and connections within that industry. Healthcare club's definitely been really great for that. I'm also co-leading the Adam Smith Society, which is basically a club where we debate free market solutions to different problems, whether it's social security or healthcare or global pros and cons of globalization. And that's just kind of a fun club to think, kind of like take a step out of your everyday life here at the GSB and think about these much larger issues.
Sure.
And so that's been really fun to think about that and be involved with some of those discussions. It's also tied into the Hoover Institute quite a bit, and so we get some really great speakers.
That's really cool. I know stuff that I've done. I'm involved with GSB Pride, which is our LGBT community organization here on campus. That's been a great source of support and meeting a lot of great new friends. I'm also involved with, this isn't technically an extracurricular, but one of the kind of flagship programs that the GSB offers is called the Arbuckle Fellows Program. And what that is in your second year, you have the opportunity as an MBA 2 to lead what's called a squad of 6 MBA 1s, first-year students. And together in that squad, in this very small, intimate venue, you work through case studies and role plays and discussions and reflections to really find out what kind of leader you want to be. And as the MBA 2, you are essentially owning that discussion. You are helping your squad members discover what it is that they maybe didn't know about themselves, helping them find strengths that they didn't know they had, helping them work on weaknesses that they are aware of. And I know my experience as an MBA 1 in squad was tremendously rewarding, and I'm so lucky that now I get the chance to carry that forward and help kind of shape just a little piece of the leadership development that MBAs get over their 2 years at the GSB. So something I'm really, really looking forward to.
And about how many Arbuckle Fellows are there?
I think there are about 70 or so Arbuckle Fellows. It's a competitive program. You'll typically apply just in the beginning of your second quarter here in the winter quarter, and you'll interview, you have essays to write, and then ultimately they'll select. And if you are picked up for it, there's an extensive training that you go through. You take one of Stanford's signature classes called Touchy Feely. There's a lot of information out there on that. I took it this quarter. It was amazing. And then when you're serving as an Arbuckle Fellow, it's not just the meetings with the squad mates. You're also having the chance to take 2 full quarters worth of classes where you talk about what's gone on in your squad. You have a one-on-one coaching session multiple times per the quarter, and you really dissect it down to what techniques can I use that make me effective as a leader, and what techniques can I explore in this safe space that really might be more effective for me as I go forward and try and find what's a good fit for me in the civilian world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
A question that's come in about a little more on the nose for military stuff is, do GSB students tend to serve in the reserves? Can any of you comment on sort of the reserve mix, and if you were able to incorporate that into your GSB experience?
Sure. I really thought about joining the reserves or actively participating in the reserves when I left the Marines about a year ago. I think that's a very personal decision. Like I said, I have a family, and so my decision-making process centered around what I really wanted out of the reserves and what the costs and benefits of that experience would be. And for me, it just seemed that the opportunity cost to participate in the reserves, at least at this time, would be too high for my family and for my academic experience here. Though I will say that there's a small minority of the veteran population here that is actively participating in the reserves, and there's plenty of opportunities to do that if that makes sense for you. And so don't be worried about coming to the GSB and saying that you won't be able to participate in your service. You can. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. The question is, does that make sense for you in your current situation while you are here at the GSB for those 2 years? I may very well actively participate in the reserves when I graduate.
That's a great point, and I think a lot of people find that they maybe start in the reserves and over the initial time at the GSB discover that it's not something that is compatible with what their priorities are at that point. And that's the beauty of the reserves, in my view, is that you can always transition out of active duty, start with the reserves, and if it's not working at that point in your life, you can transition out and maybe look to join back up later on if that's something that appeals to you. And I know that's been the case with some of our fellow veteran community members here at the GSB.
One thing I'd want to add there, Steve, is the fact that as you transition, just make sure that if this is appropriate for you, that you apply for your reserve commission so that you have it should you want to go ahead and pursue that during your time at the GSB. So make sure you do the paperwork beforehand so that you don't close that door unnecessarily.
Absolutely. It's much easier to leave the second time than it is to try and get back in after fully closing the door, as
Correct.
you say. And I don't think we have any in our class who are actively in the reserves right now, at least veteran members, but I know in classes before, people from all branches of the military have found units around here that allow them to drill and balance their GSB obligations with their military service. Yeah. So it can be done. It's a very personal decision that you really just kind of have to think long and hard about. We talked about the reserves. Sarah, you're on active duty. How has it been for you on active duty, balancing kind of this civilian educational experience with the fact that you know you're going back to active duty? What do you think you'll take back to active duty, I think is a good question.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties back to why I came to Stanford, and one of the reasons I came to Stanford was for the ideas. Stanford and the Silicon Valley, like there's such a different way of thinking that's sort of related to tech and entrepreneurship, and I wanted to be exposed to those ideas and take it back to the Army.
Okay.
Getting back to the first part of your question, what is it like being here on active duty? I think some parts of the experience are a little bit different for me, is that I feel like I have more freedom. I know everyone was like really, really thinking about their summer internships, like this is gonna like make or break it for my career. It's really super important. I know exactly where I'm going after the GSB, so I think it took a lot of pressure off of me to just focus on areas I wanted to explore. And, and so I've got to do these, I'm doing a internship in Paris in finance later on this summer, and I'm also working on this this med tech company. So it's been good to just sort of explore the space, and that's something that that I think I have as an active duty officer versus other people who are more concerned about their post GSB work.
It's pretty cool that you get to take advantage of not just knowing that you'll return to active duty and hopefully bring these ideas to transform the Army, but that you have the space to take advantage of all that the GSB offers in your 2 years here. And I know our other active duty veterans who are here, at least in our class right now, have found a lot of the same success you have in that department.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. We're going to move on now to the audience questions that have been submitted. We'll get to as many of them as we can. First one, let's see. This is a great one. So 2 of you mentioned that you had served for 10 plus years, one married with kids. Do you find yourself challenged in any different way by being a little older than the average student, or have any general advice for someone applying that is a little more removed from their college experience?
Okay, I'll jump on this grenade.
You win.
So I would say that, one, we have a over 30 group here, which is very select. You have to be over 30 years old to be part of
One of
this
the more elite groups on
elite
campus.
group at the GSB, and it is heavily influenced by veterans. In all seriousness, I think that having a family definitely affects my perspective and how I look at the GSB and what I'm going to do here. I've got 2 kids under the age of 5, and so tea time with my daughter or wrestling with her or my son and taking them outside to play is a big priority for me, and that means that I give up other things like networking on certain occasions or a social event that might be going on. So I think being older and having kids does affect the way you look at the GSB experience, but it's not forced upon you. It's a decision and a priority that I've made for my family. Being older also gives me the added advantage of just being able to see things with a different perspective, right? And that doesn't come with age necessarily, but it does come typically with being in the military for 10 years. I think that has been an advantage. The thing that may be a little bit of a disadvantage, if I'm being totally honest, is maybe your experiences differ, but working in the government means that there was a lot more bureaucracy and a lot of older technology that I had to use. And coming to the GSB, where everybody's really super tech savvy, means that you might have to pick up your tech game on how to collaborate with other people and how to use Excel to its fullest capacities as an example, or even PowerPoint. But none of those obstacles are insurmountable. But there were some differences that I experienced when I first got to the GSB.
Yeah, I really second that. So I'm from the Silicon Valley, so I thought, the tech thing will be easy. And coming here, there was all these different modes of communication, whether it was Trello, WhatsApp, GroupMe, Slack. I was like, what's Slack? And so it took some getting used to. But we have tons of classmates that are super helpful, really kind, and understand this stuff. So if you're a vet, my advice would be just sit down with one of your classmates, and they'll kind of walk you through it. To answer this question for strengths, one of the strengths I think a lot of veterans have is that we've been in situations before where we're just kind of thrown, and it's sort of this baptism by fire, and you figure it out. And so we figure it out, and we persevere. And it was a bit rough navigating all the jargon the first quarter. Actually, if I have one piece of fun advice that I'm actually very serious about, is to watch the show Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen it?
It's a great
Absolutely.
show, yes.
So as soon as I watched that show, everything made
Makes
sense to me. I was like, yeah. Cap tables, term sheets, SaaS, the whole thing, B2B. It was all just jargon before, but now I've got it all down.
Clearly, you're ready for that internship in finance.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, just add to that, if you've been in the service for a decade or longer, you probably will have been if you're an officer, a major or close to being a major. You got to hang that at the door when you come to the GSB and just get in the mix with everybody else. If you hold on to your past so much and what rank you used to have, it might be an impediment for you to be able to really get the most out of this experience. Albeit that some of your classmates might be 24 or 25, but they're here for a reason. And they've got a lot of value to add. So, sit alongside them, and they'll be teaching you something in the evening. And it would be a sad day if you left this business school without having rubbed some elbows with some 24-year-olds who really know what they're doing.
Definitely
Absolutely.
True. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Here's a question that came in. after the GI Bill and Yellow Ribbon Program assistance, what would be the estimated financial burden? So I can address this one. There's a lot of depths of complexity to this one. So baseline assumptions going in, I am at 100% eligibility for the Yellow Ribbon Program and GI Bill. If you don't know what that means, make sure to take a look at the VA's website. It can be a little complicated, and if there are more questions, we can help you out. But if you're at 100% eligibility, as I am, and didn't receive any sort of outside financial aid or fellowships, the level of assistance offered is the same for everybody at Stanford if they're at 100% eligibility for the GI Bill. And what that entails is, for the 2018 academic year, roughly $23K from the government. With Yellow Ribbon funds, the way they are, that's roughly another $39K on top of that. So right now you're looking at, I'm always terrified at math in public, but over $60,000 that will be furnished to everyone who is at 100% Yellow Ribbon eligibility. And with tuition last year in the neighborhood of high 60s to low 70s, that's a significant chunk covered by Stanford for people at full Yellow Ribbon eligibility. So very, very helpful for veterans that have served for a long time. And then remember on top of that, that there's also the housing allowance that's paid to you every month. That up here is on the order of $3,600 a month. It's fixed to cost of living for the area. So that's a huge benefit, especially if you live out in town like me. And there's also a tuition textbook stipend that's paid every year as well. It's about $1,000. So bottom line, a significant amount of financial aid is available to those who are at 100% Yellow Ribbon eligibility. And even for those who aren't, there are tons of options that the GI Bill or that the GSB Financial Aid Office can educate you on that might be workable for you. There's standard federal loans, there's private loans, there's another GI or a VA program called vocational rehab that I'm not super smart on.
Yep.
But the bottom line is there are a ton of options out there for financial aid. And if you really want to come to Stanford, I would say that let the finances, try to make that be just one part of the overall calculation. And it may have some more weight for others than it does for some as it does for others. But only you know that. So just give it the due consideration that it deserves. Regardless, if you're at full eligibility, I can tell you that the GI Bill is very, very helpful. Attending Stanford certainly has helped me.
I just add one more thing as well. As you consider what schools you want to go to, once you get accepted to the many schools you probably will have applied to, take an apples to apples comparison and actually compare what you would get whether you go to another school. Because I was actually shocked as I did the comparison myself as we transitioned as a family to the GSB that the GSB, after all the support it provided me, was actually much more affordable than some other schools that I expected to be more affordable. So it actually worked out to be economically aligned for me to come to the GSB, and that was to my surprise. So just do the analysis, practice your pre-MBA skills, make Excel sheet, and adjust for the cost of living, and you might be surprised that coming to the GSB is actually the best place to go.
Awesome. Got time for just a couple more questions if we keep our answers pretty quick, so we'll try to get to them here. Looking back, following your first year, what would you recommend potential students do to best prepare themselves prior to returning to school? I've got like 2 one-sentence answers. The first one would be try to relax a little bit. You'll definitely, if you've been picked to come here, you have the skills to succeed. So no need to super overload if you don't want to. If you feel comfortable kind of doing some prep on like Excel or something like that, you can do that. I would say you don't need to. And then my other quick sentence advice would be look at the possibility and see if it's right for you to do a pre-MBA internship. There are a lot of big companies in tech and finance and consulting that offer veteran-specific opportunities to work in finance or work in consulting for a summer just to get a taste of it. And that's essentially a free internship where you can either set yourself up to go back to that field if you really like it in your first MBA 1 internship, or if you don't like it, you've learned a lot and you have an educated perspective, eyes open about what it means to work there. So that's kind of my advice that I would give myself looking back on it. What do you all think?
So my first, I'll just reiterate my first piece of advice, which is watch the show Silicon Valley, because everything will make sense.
Excellent. Underline.
And I totally second you on the Excel. If you have a chance and you want to take some of the more, the accelerator or the advanced classes when you get onto campus, I would encourage students or admits to take a look at the study materials they give you and try and brush up on some of these subjects, especially if you want to place into these accelerator or higher level classes. That being said, if you don't have the time, don't stress out about it because you'll be fine. I was really busy leading up to coming here, so I didn't have the time to work on any of that stuff, and I was fine. So just do whatever makes sense for you.
Cool.
Really quickly, I would say that you won't have a ton of time here to do some deep level thinking about what you want your life to look like after the GSB, which is a bit surprising. So I would say if you've got the time and the bandwidth, I would definitely just sit down and talk to your significant other or your friends and like kind of design your way through what you want your life to look like outside of the GSB so you can hit the ground running. Even with the academic adjustment period being what it is here, recruiting starts pretty quickly and you won't have the time to really think about it. So if you can think about it before you come to the GSB, it'd be very helpful.
And then I think maybe we have time for one or two more if we've got the high sign. Perfect. All right, did you guys come to the Stanford GSB knowing exactly what field you wanted to specialize in, and how has your perspective changed since your time here? Do you want to start us on that?
Sure, I did not know. I said that piece of advice because I didn't have the time to think about what I wanted, and so my perspective has certainly changed, partially because I know a lot more about what private equity looks like now and what investment banking is. I didn't know what any of those things were really before I came here, and I realized some of those things aren't just for me and for my family. And so I think as you learn more about each of these possibilities, you'll make the right decision based on your desires and what you're really capable of doing. GSB opens a lot of doors, but there are some things that you're just not going to be able to do because you spent 11 years or 10 years in the service as compared to your colleagues who did investment banking right out of undergrad.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that veterans, we're all, by the nature of our transition, we're transitioning from one career field to another. So I think there's very much the expectation that you don't know what you want to do. It's very common. I think it's definitely a really good idea to have priorities or areas of interest before you come here so you don't lose focus. But you'll figure it out as you get exposed to sort of this smorgasbord of different opportunities.
It's an excellent word. That's an MBA word right there. Smorgasbord. So I guess I also didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I was pretty focused in where I thought I wanted to end up in aerospace, which is related to my background. That's, I'd say, probably not, in my experience, most veterans end up doing something completely different than what they did in the military when they leave and go to the business world. I'm kind of tangentially staying in the same way. So I knew where I wanted to end up, but as far as function, I had no idea, and frankly still don't. I had the opportunity to do a pre-MBA internship for an aircraft leasing company that I'll be returning to for half the summer, and then I'll also be working for an aerospace startup as well for the second half of my summer. So I'm exploring different functions within one broader industry, and the GSB, like far and away, I would not have had the chance to explore either of these internships, both of which are really exciting, without the resources and the benefits of being here in this program. So yeah, I didn't know what I want to specialize in either, and I still don't. Hopefully we'll figure it out over the summer, but if you don't, it's totally cool because a lot of people have that exact same experience, and there's a chance to reinvent yourself 10 different times at the GSB if you want to and if you need to. So certainly nothing to be afraid of. This may be our last one. How about this? How do you think your military experience helps strengthen your application? And what other extracurricular activities did you have that you believe maybe were an asset to you as you applied? I'll start on that one. I think our military experience, for me, it gave me a lot of really unique and interesting stories that helped show ways in which I was able to demonstrate leadership in my work in the Navy. And that is such a central focus here at the GSB that I think your average military veteran often has a huge bank of those stories to draw on. And I think that can really strengthen your application, make it more powerful, make it about you, and show the various talents you have. So just the kind of unique experience that as a military member you get that most other people don't get was huge for me, and I think was an asset to my application. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I would definitely second the leadership component. I had the opportunity to work in two very different areas of the Army. I led combat missions in Afghanistan, and I also worked at the Defense Language Institute, where I led education initiatives at a flagship school for foreign language education. And the types of leadership you need in both scenarios are so different. And I think that the military offers you a lot of opportunities to explore your leadership style, to figure out how to motivate different groups of people. And we have exposure to lots of different people. So like the military is kind of this great geographic representation of the United States, at least in the U.S. military, and we have kind of this global outward thinking approach. And I think those elements really come out in veteran applications.
All right, we're almost out of time. So before we head off, Sarah and Vineet, do you have any final words of advice for anyone out there who's thinking about applying for a Stanford MBA, especially if they've served in the military? We'll start with Sarah.
You know, I would say absolutely do it. If you you can't catch a fish or a hook's not in the water, so try. I think one of the things I would love to highlight is the Veterans Club and the veterans community here. I think, you know, we're small but mighty. We have a good representation of the different services and also international vets as well, especially we have some from Korea and from Israel especially. And it's, so definitely apply. And then what was the first part of your question?
That was basically it. So final words of advice if you're applying for Stanford MBA, especially if you served in the military.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Apply.
I would second Sarah's thought. I only applied, quite frankly, because my wife convinced me to. GSB was my number one choice, but I thought I'd never get into school here. And I applied at the very late at the part of the first season, and I'm here now. I'm very grateful for that. And the other thing I would say as a recommendation is really hone your story. GSB is really about stories, and if you don't have your story really tight about what makes you special and different, it's going to be hard to get in here.
Totally agree on that point. And for me, my piece of advice on honing your story is to start early. Ideally, you'll take plenty of time to really craft those essays in particular to give the most authentic picture of you that you can. And don't write the essays thinking that you have to appear as this incredibly like superhero type person. Be authentic and be you and show what you've truly done through your stories and your experiences that makes you differentiated and unique. And if you focus more on just being true to yourself and let that come through, I think you'll find great success and hopefully find yourself among the next year's crop of applicants or whenever you come to the GSB. All right, thank you so much to Sarah and Vineet. If you'd like, there are a tremendous amount of resources and points of contact available for you on the GSB Veterans Club website. Just Google that, it'll come right up. There's also a contact form out there if you'd like to try and get in touch with any member of the Veterans Club. We're here as a resource to help you, and if we don't know the answer to a particular question, we can definitely put you in touch with someone who does know the answer. So with that, we'd like to say thanks so much for joining us today. It's our absolute pleasure to speak with you. Good luck, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.